We are just a few days out from For All Service Day. This is your chance to talk one-on-one with a lawyer and find out the legal information you need to know about all kinds of situations. It is this Friday, March the 4th. The phone lines are open from 11 until 7. You might want to take a screenshot of that phone number. We'll have it up for you again a little bit later on. You know, employment questions often come up on For All Service Day, and Ben Winikoff is one of those attorneys who has volunteered before on For All Service Day. So for people who are like, really, I get to call and I just get to ask questions?
That's right. This is the legal community's opportunity to give back to those around us and just answer your questions for free.
Okay, and so you need to probably have a pen and a piece of paper and all that other kind of stuff, because they're probably going to be giving you information that you need to write down that you'll have to remember.
That's right. We are going to be giving you legal advice to hopefully put you in the right direction of where you would need to file something, or where you can obtain additional information to help you with your legal needs.
All right, so we want to give you some ideas about what kinds of questions you can be asking and what kind of answers you may be getting. So let's say you're talking about employment, and if you've got a question about overtime, workers' comp, or workers' rights, well, this is probably the guy who's going to answer your call. And what we want to be able to do is give you an opportunity right now to ask a question on that. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you the text number so that you can actually ask your question to Ben, 336-379-5775. You remain anonymous on your question, but you get your questions answered in real time. All right, so Ben, first and foremost, let's talk about this. If someone's a salaried employee, does that mean that they're entitled to overtime?
They can be. So one common misconception people have is that I'm paid on a salary, therefore I can't be entitled to overtime. And that's not actually the test. The test to determine whether or not you're entitled to overtime is based on how much you're paid and what your job duties are. So just because you're salaried doesn't mean you're not entitled to overtime compensation.
So how would you find that out then?
So you would want to consider talking to an attorney to go over the Fair Labor Standards Act or the North Carolina Wage and Hour Act to tell you what that rate of pay is. It can change from year to year, and as well as go over what the exemptions are. As a general rule, if you're in management, you tend to be exempt from overtime, but if you're not in management, then you tend to be entitled to overtime.
Okay, these are good things to know. All right, so how about this question? Is my employer required me to provide me with a meal break?
Again, another common misconception. A lot of people call saying, my boss didn't give me a lunch break. And surprisingly, your boss isn't required to give you a meal break. However, if they do give you a meal break, it is required to be at least 30 minutes so that they can deduct that from your pay. And most importantly, they cannot ask you to work during that meal break. It needs to be truly uninterrupted time. And if you are still answering calls or answering the door during your meal break, then that's not what we call a bona fide meal period, and you could be entitled to past due compensation for that work time.
Okay. All right, how about this? Does my employer have to pay me vacation leave after I quit or leave my employment? Because a lot of people, they have 10 days of vacation and they think they're going to get paid for it. So is that true?
Generally, yes, right? Your employer is required to pay you all earned compensation, which can include bonuses, which can include commissions and vacation pay. The only exception is that if they have a written forfeiture clause, typically in an employee handbook or some other kind of written notice. So if that is not in writing, then those are benefits that they have to pay you even after you stop working there.
Okay, and is that something that you ask ahead of time before you leave? Like you get that compensation written out on paper so you know?
Well, it's the employer's obligation to provide that notice to you in writing. So if they have never provided that notice to you in writing, they cannot, after the fact, say, oh, you left, well, here's the policy that you didn't know about. So the obligation is on the employer to provide you notice that they have a forfeiture provision.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Let's kind of look at workers' compensation. So let's say something happens and you did not file an accident report. Does that mean that you can't file a workers' compensation claim?
No. The only requirement is that you provide written notice to your employer that you were injured at work. That notice can be an email. It could be even so far as a text message. But there is no rule or law that requires that you formally can submit an accident report. And the rule is that it just has to be written notice within 30 days of the accident. And again, the rule is designed to allow the employer to investigate the claim. One of the exceptions to that would be if your boss saw you fall at work, right? If your boss has actual notice of your accident, then you may be entitled to compensation even without providing written notice.
Okay. And what about if you were like traveling for work out of state when you're injured? Can you still file a workers' compensation claim here in North Carolina?
Yes. So just because you are in Tennessee or Florida or Virginia when you actually got hurt, North Carolina still retains jurisdiction of your claim so long as your principal place of employment was in North Carolina, the employer's principal place of business is in North Carolina. I'm sorry, employee's principal place of business is in North Carolina, or the contract for employment was made in North Carolina. And potentially, depending on the other state, you may be able to file claims in both states and select the state that has the better remedies for you.
Yeah, and you don't probably want to take the first answer of, no, we don't think you can file workers' comp. You probably need to push
That's
that.
right.
And okay.
That's right.
Right.
Always consult with an attorney to see if North Carolina has remedies that are better for you.